El-Hajj El-Malik El-Shabazz, also known to us as Malcolm X, was assassinated February 21st, 1965. With us today is Sister Shirley Roussan, who was in the audience and witness to the assassination. How are you today, Sister Roussan?
I'm very well, thank you.
Great, great. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a retired school teacher, a mother of 3, grandmother of 10. Live here in Greensboro. Was married to Cecil Roussan at the time when we were in New York and witnessed to Malcolm's assassination.
Ashe, ashe. And your husband, Cecil Roussan, who was he?
He was, he was my husband and my friend, and he was, at the time of the assassination, one of Malcolm's bodyguards.
I see, ashe, okay. When did Cecil Roussan get involved with Malcolm X?
My husband and I went to New York in 1963 to find employment, as a lot of Southerners did back in those days. And after we were settled down, we would just ride around looking for scenes, looking at the scenes and getting familiar with the city. And so one afternoon, we were riding through New York City, and there was a person standing on the street preaching or talking or teaching, whichever word best describes what he was doing at that time. And my husband became very interested in this person, and later on investigated to find out who he was, and find out that he, at that time, was Malcolm X.
Wow. And how did your husband get involved with Malcolm X?
Well, after he became so interested in the person speaking on the street, he investigated to find out who he was. And when he found out who he was, he began to go to his meetings, because Malcolm had quite a few meetings at that time, quite a few followers. And he would teach and talk, and my husband found out where to go, and so he started attending the meetings.
Ashe, ashe. So he became Malcolm's bodyguard.
Yes, after a while, he was very, very faithful to go to the meetings and to be involved in what Malcolm was teaching and trying to do at that time. And so I guess he was appointed or volunteered or whatever people do to get to become these special people. And he became one of Malcolm's bodyguards. He was very faithful to Malcolm.
Yeah, special. That resonates. Because I don't think that Malcolm would just choose anybody to be his bodyguard.
He would not.
Can you tell us about the mood of the community during that time when Malcolm was speaking and just really teaching the people?
I think the mood of the people, especially Black people, was one of appreciation, one of interest, one of wanting to be involved, one of feeling better about themselves, and just willing to do what was necessary to make life better for all Black people.
By any means necessary.
Yes.
That was his phrase. Ashe, ashe. So let's talk about and move on to the actual experience at the Audubon Ballroom. Can you tell us about that day?
This was a Sunday, and Cecil had left early. I knew where he was going, going downtown because of the big meeting. Everybody knew about it. Was highly advertised. And I was home. My sister was there with me. And my husband and I had 2 children, a little boy and a little girl. And my sister had one little girl, 2 years old. My oldest child was 2 and the youngest one was 5 months. And this particular Sunday afternoon, we were just kind of lounging around and decided we were going to go to Brooklyn to visit one of my aunties who lived over in Brooklyn. We lived uptown Broadway on Pennsylvania Avenue. Actually, right up the street from the ballroom. Was not that far from it. We had to get on the subway to go downtown to get to the ballroom. So we decided that we were going to go and visit my auntie. We all got dressed and went to the station, got on the subway, and I don't know if it's a premonition or an unknown plan. We got downtown to change subways to go to Brooklyn. I said, well, we're not going to Brooklyn. We're going to go to the ballroom and hear Malcolm speak. And so that's what we did. And so we went in the ballroom. There was a large crowd, probably around 400 people there, maybe more, maybe less. And the crowd was milling around. There were just the old people, young people, white people, black people. Just a lot of people there. And the mood was, I want to hear something. I want to know something. I want to see Malcolm. I want to hear him speak. That was the mood.
Sounds like it was just, I can feel it. I can feel the power of our people coming together to witness, our brother Malcolm. Can you tell us about the actual shooting?
What I remember about the actual shooting, my sister and our children were seated probably 10 to 12 rows back from the stage. We were all just waiting. The crowd was kind of hushed, talking softly, just waiting for Malcolm to come out. He didn't come out immediately when we thought that he was going to come out. He was just a few minutes. I don't know how many minutes it took him to get out there from the time he was supposed to start. But we were very patiently waiting. And when he finally came out, walked on the stage and stationed himself behind the podium and spoke to the crowd in his usual greeting. Salam alaikum. And the crowd responded with alaikum salam. And it was just seconds after his greeting when someone made a commotion. Some guy to my left said, hey man, take your hand out of my pocket. And of course that drew the attention of the crowd that way. And when that happened, there were 1 or 2 guys that just ran down the aisle shooting at Malcolm. And they just shot him. The Audubon Ballroom was set up so that there were like 3 sections, 1 section on the left, 1 in the center, and 1 on the right. And we were sitting in the center section, so we were between, we were on the right side of the guy that ran down the aisle, because he was on the left. His wife was sitting in the front row with her children, and of course all people started screaming and making noise, but she screamed, help him, help my husband, because she immediately knew that he had been shot, but she was also there trying to take care of her own children who were sitting there with her. What I remember about what I did myself is I was holding on to my little girl. The little boy was excited. He was trying to find his dad. My sister had her little girl, and she was trying to hold on to her. It just took just a few seconds or maybe minutes, probably minutes, when my husband came to find me and the children, and he had a little boy who was just a little way from me. But when he got there, there was a white man who had pushed over a table and had pushed me, my sister, and our children down behind that table, and he was shielding our bodies with his body. And that's how my husband found us.
Wow.
It was bedlam, if you could use that word. It was chaos, was screaming, was anger. With a lot of emotion going on right then.
Could only imagine. So, after that horrific experience, how did you feel when all was over? They had, I think you had mentioned that they had beaten the guys that shot Malcolm.
Yes, yes. They were able to grab a hold to one or two. It was more than one person. So they had one. It's just a lot of people was holding on to him and beating him. And there was another one that someone else grabbed onto. I don't know if they were able to hold on to him or he got away. But I also mentioned that, didn't mention, but I had a brother-in-law that was there at the time too. He was walking around with a chair above his head. I guess he was just going to pound anybody that came near him that didn't look good. So, but he was there, angry too. I think there were all kinds of emotions going on right there, and I believe with myself, I had an emotion of I was feeling relief because my children were safe, I was safe, my sister was safe, and my husband was safe. But I also felt very, very angry and very sad because of what had happened to Malcolm. Because we had gone there to see and hear Malcolm, and we wouldn't be able to do that anymore.
Yes, some of us still feel anger.
Yes, we do.
Because our prince was taken away from us.
Yes.
Wow. So how did it impact the rest of your family? I mean, how did you all move on after that type of experience?
Well, it took a lot of patience and a lot of relying on each other, a lot of talking about things that were important to us at the time. We didn't remain in New York for a long time after that. Immediately after everything settled down at the ballroom, my husband took myself and the children and my sister back to our apartment, and we just kind of settled down and talked. And for the next few days, of course, all of the news was about Malcolm. Malcolm, and we were just very, very sad. Very, very sad and very, very angry and upset.
And so you said you didn't stay in New York very long. You moved to...
We moved to North Carolina. And one of the reasons why we moved to North Carolina as soon as we did after the assassination was because I guess the courts or the system there had decided that they were going to arrest people who were witnesses to be material witnesses at the trial of the persons that they had arrested. And of course, this was a worldwide known case, and so they wanted to do the right thing, I guess, and have witnesses that would speak up and say what they saw. There was a black detective, a black man who was worked as a detective out of Virginia that came to our apartment a few days after this happened and told my husband that there was a probability that he might be one of the ones arrested as a material witness because of where he was and who he was at the time. And that if we did not want this to happen, we needed to leave New York. And so we did. We packed up our little belongings, my sister and her daughter, me and my 2 children, Cecil, and one other young man from New York that wanted to ride down south with us. So we had an old 1952 Buick that was our mode of transportation at the time. We loaded up that little car with what we could take with us and with ourselves, and we started out in the middle of the night. We didn't know if we were being watched, if we just didn't know what was going on or who was looking at us or what they knew about us or anything. So we moved there, left out in the middle of the night, and we just, maybe 1 or 2 blocks from our apartment, we were stopped by a New York City policeman, and he asked us where we were going in the middle of the night. So my husband said we were thrown out of our apartment, so we're going downtown to Harlem to live with one of my uncles. And he said, okay, go on. And we hightailed it out of New York across the George Washington Bridge as fast as we could get out of there. And we didn't have it really easy because right as soon as we got across the George Washington Bridge, our car broke down. Fan belt broke on the car. And I don't even remember to this day who came to help us or how we got started back up, but we did. And we came on to North Carolina and settled in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Wow. I want to ask you about the mood of the community after the shooting, because before you talked about the excitement, etc., and then after that traumatic event, what was the mood of the community?
The community was angry. They were sad. Did a lot of crying. You could even see people crying on the street. They would be gathered in little groups talking and discussing things among themselves. I would think the most outstanding emotion that I saw at the time was probably anger. Anger and sadness because Malcolm was gone.
And did we at that time do any rioting or any, expressions of violence, or did we just kind of just feel it? How do you see people deal with those emotions?
A variety of things going on, I think. I remember Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, who were followers of Malcolm X, and they spoke out and said a lot of things. A lot of things was printed in the papers that different people were saying. Articles in the newspaper were saying, trying to make comments on who did it or who did not do it. They were trying to put the blame on one set of people or another set of people or the government or someone else. And they were just at a loss, really. Just kind of at a loss.
So I was thinking about when Martin Luther King was killed, the riots that broke out all over the nation. Did the same thing happen during that time, or did we not explode when Malcolm was killed?
I think that probably, I don't remember riots as such, but I remember people just talking and being angry, being being mad, just being at a loss as to what to do next.
Wow. So when you all moved to North Carolina, I know you're having still to deal with that and having to pick up and start all over. What did your husband do upon moving here? What did he get involved in? Did he work? What did he do?
After, well, one of the first things that we had to do, of course, was to try to find employment. And then he did get involved. We had a lot of movements all over the country at that time. And in Greensboro, there was a movement that had to do with garbage collectors and them trying to make sure that they had adequate pay and benefits that they needed. There were sit-ins and just all kinds of little movements. But my husband was always there, involved in something. Even before we got married, he was involved in the school sit-ins for equal rights to shop and eat wherever you wanted to go, do that. So he was always very, very busy. But right after a few days after we came from New York, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law and I rented a U-Haul van to go back to New Jersey to get our furniture, because we couldn't bring anything with us except clothes, just enough clothes to change in for a few days. All of our furniture and everything was still in New York. So my in-laws went back with me. My husband was afraid to go, and we were afraid for him to go, so he didn't go. So we went up there and got all the furniture out of the apartment and came on back. It was quite an experience for me at the time, because I did have the two small children, but they were very supportive and very helpful in helping us to do that, to make that move. And of course, they really understood, because their son, that was their son. So they wanted to do whatever they could to help him out.
So it sounds like the community worked together, the struggle continued. We continued to fight for liberation, even though we were losing our leaders.
Oh, yes.
Do you see that kind of strength today?
No. I don't. I wished we had that kind of strength today. I wish we had leaders that would just come and speak out. Malcolm did not seem to have any hesitation to speak out and to say what was true, what he believed to be true, and what he knew to be true. He encouraged people to feel good about themselves, to love each other, and to strive for yourself. Be self-sufficient. Don't rely on somebody else to do something for you that you can do for yourself.
That's right.
And sometimes in our society today, we don't see that. We see us looking for a handout or for somebody to help us. And with many of the things that are going on in our society today, we don't see the love for each other that Malcolm was fostering, that he was teaching.
Yes.
Love yourself. Love who you are.
If Malcolm had lived, do you think our situation would have been much better? A little bit better? What kind of better?
I think that if he had lived and continued teaching as he was teaching in that day, if we were listening and following him as we were in that day, things would be a whole lot better. We we would care more about our families. We'd care more about our fellow man. We would care more about our children. You know, Malcolm had quite a few children. And he was a family man, and he believed in family. And I think that, yes, I just think things would be better.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much better, considering who Malcolm was and how he was?
I would probably say on a scale of about 8, because we're always going to have those that are going to say, well, he can't tell me what to do. But he had lots of followers. And he had a lot of people who believed in him, who trusted him, who looked up to him, who admired him.
That's pretty powerful. That's a powerful 8. I want to thank you so much for this interview. Is there anything else that you want to share from your heart? Because that was traumatic to have to see that and to have your children exposed to that and see other Black children exposed to that level of violent trauma, to have our shining prince taken away from us. Anything you want to share with us?
One of the things that I was able to do, I am a retired school teacher, and I taught in Thomasville, North Carolina. And you know how the school systems do now, they have a Black History Month. And when Malcolm died, I put together a scrapbook. And the title of that scrapbook was Our Shining Hero. I can't find it now. But every year during Black History Month, the history teacher would ask me to come and talk to his class and show my scrapbook and talk about Malcolm. And that was something that I really enjoyed doing. And I did it for a long time, as long as I was in the school system. One of my little granddaughters told me that in the school system that she was here in Greensboro during Black History Month, they were talking about it, and she went up to the chalkboard, and wrote Malcolm X's name on the chalkboard. And her teacher said, "You erase that off. You get that off. You cannot put that on there." And made her take it down. And she just looked at the teacher and said, "Well, Malcolm is my hero." So I am happy that I was able to know who Malcolm X was. I never met him personally, but I knew through my husband and through his teachings and listening to his program on the radio, listening to his record albums, reading his book, I know who he was.
And because you knew who he was, you also made an impact on those children because you continued the teachings. So that's a beautiful thing. His legacy will not die. He's gone, but his legacy and his work will not die.
No.
I want to thank you for this interview. And I also want to give respect to your husband, Cecil Roussand. He is one of thousands of Black men, Black people that participated in the struggle and made it his life's work. And to those people, we need to give honor. So we're grateful for your husband putting his life on the line, for our brother Malcolm.